And here I was waiting to see your pretty face.
Can't have everything, Michael.
Yeah. What do you drink, Michael? What are you drinking?
Okay, we're live, Yancy.
We're live and recording.
Okay, so I think before I call the meeting to order, I'm sure I join the whole council and wishing for peace in Europe and continued freedom of the Ukrainian people, and we'll see what we can do as a city government to help out. And of course, Ash Wednesday is tomorrow, and wish everyone a very meaningful Lenten season during the holy time of the year. So I call this workshop meeting of March 1st, 2022 to order at 7:33 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please read the statement regarding the Open Public Meetings Act.
This meeting is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. Notice of this meeting was included in a notice sent to the Record and the Star Ledger and advertised in said newspapers on January 10th, 2022, posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as the required notices under the statute. A copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Please take notice that in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6, at SEEK and Local Finance Notice 2020-21, establishing standard protocols, the City Council of the City of Englewood adopted resolution number 333. Oh, I'm sorry, I have the wrong number on here. It's resolution number 001-01-03-22, authorizing the City of Englewood scheduled council meetings for 2022 to be held remotely via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to participate in this meeting may do so by calling or clicking on the link below at 7:30 p.m. Please see the link on our website or by dialing 929-205-6099. The meeting ID for this meeting is 892-7687-6541, and the passcode is 215163. Individuals calling into this number will be able to fully participate in the meeting, including providing public comment. Public comments may be submitted by 3 p.m. on the date of the meeting, either through written letter or email to meeting@cityofenglewood.org. All written comments shall be read during the public forum portion of the meeting and shall be subject to the same time limitations for public speaking. Duplicative comments shall be noted for the record and summarized. The agenda for the meeting can be found on the city's website at www.cityofenglewood.org. A separate meeting will be used if closed session is required. Proper notice having been given, the municipal clerk is directed to include the statement in the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilman Kopp?
Yeah.
Councilman Cohen?
Yep.
Councilman Hamer?
Here.
Councilwoman Marin?
Here.
Council President Rosenzweig.
Here.
Also present is Mayor Michael Wiles, City Manager Sonia Alves Viveros, City Attorney Bill Bailey, and City CFO Michael Kaufman.
Okay, so we will not be going into closed session at the start of this meeting, but we do have a closed session scheduled for the end with an invited guest. So we will be trying to get the open part of the meeting done by 9 o'clock so the public can watch the State of the Union address, and we can keep to the schedule with our guests coming for the closed session. So we'll start off with the agenda items. So I'll ask the public if they have any comment on agenda items 79 through 84 to please address the council. We don't have a consent agenda tonight. We'll be voting on each one individually.
Point of order. Point of order. Our published agenda, I think the published agenda only has 81, 79 to 81.
There was a revised agenda put out yesterday. It has up to 84.
Don't don't we need to change? Don't we need to vote on a change if that's what we're doing from the published one from Friday? Mr. Bailey?
The agenda per the city charter actually doesn't have to be put out until 24 hours before the meeting.
Okay.
So this one, I think, was put out yesterday morning, I think, yeah. The meetings need to be noticed 48 hours in advance, but the agendas don't have to be posted till 24 hours, so it can be changed up until that time. Once the meeting is, once you're after that 24-hour window or within that 24 hours, that's different. Then it would have to be a motion by unanimous consent to amend it.
Okay, Yancy, do we have anyone from the public who would like to address the council?
Just a reminder to the members of the public, if you wish to speak on any of the resolutions on the agenda, at the bottom of your screen, there's a more button. Click on that for raise your hand. And it's only just for the resolutions listed.
Okay, so I'll close the public comment section and we'll go to the resolutions. So again, we don't have a consent agenda. We're going to we'll just vote on each one of these individually. So number 79, renewal of the liquor license for Cajun Restaurant.
So
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any comment?
I'm just curious, something like this, why would it not be on a consent agenda?
Because I think it only would have been 2 on the consent agenda, so
Oh,
it didn't
okay.
really. I didn't anticipate any comment on this, but we might at this
Okay.
point might as well break them all up.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions or want an explanation?
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Kopp,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen,
Yes.
Councilman Hamer,
yes.
Councilwoman Marin,
Yes.
President Rosenzweig.
Yes. Okay, number 80, place-to-place transfer of plenary retail consumption license for Columbia Caliente LLC. Again, typically would have been on consent agenda, but
So moved.
really just grade these throughout. Yeah.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Second.
Roll call, please. Oh, is there any discussion on this? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilman Kopp,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen,
Yes.
Councilman Hamer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Marin,
Yes.
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. Okay, so for resolution number 81, this is a resolution authorizing Englewood to participate in the 1033 program, and we discussed this in 2021. And it did not pass in 2021, and part of the issue was we didn't have a list of which materials we'd be asking for acquisition. So that list has been provided to the council. So I thought it was appropriate to put it back on the agenda. So again, this is the acquiring excess Department of Defense equipment. So I know that we had some discussion on this last year. Yeah, Ms. Alves Viveros.
Council President, the Deputy Chief is on the call, so if he's available for any questions.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So maybe we'll move it and get a second, and if there are any questions or discussion, we can go from there.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so are there any questions or discussion from the council with regard to this? And again, this was the DOD equipment.
Should I bring him over?
Yeah, please. Because I think there'll be some questions for him.
This isn't so much a question, but a comment.
Kind of had my hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Excuse me, Councilman Hamer, let me just,
But of course, please, you do whatever you need to.
Yeah, so just to reiterate and Sonia or asking the deputy chief, anybody can correct me if I say anything that is an error, but my understanding of this is that this is the same thing that comes before us every single year. We've had enormous amounts of discussion about this. We had a resolution about this years ago saying specifically what we do or do not want this to happen. The council's messaging on this has been redundantly and entirely clear. This is something which brings free things such as computers or other kinds of such non-combat equipment to Englewood free of charge that we can benefit and not have to take out of taxpayer money. Because I know we had the same conversation last year, and I quite frankly didn't understand why, when we already have a resolution from years ago exactly specifying our feelings on this after we had many debates. We had, I think, this mentioned on 3 or 4 different agendas last year, because, and then part of this, from what I understand as well, is that the list that you provide are what is currently available. And if we procrastinate, then the list of what's available just deteriorates and there's less and less and less available. So if we continue like we did last year and have this go to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, the things that are on the list will no longer be available, and we'll have the great distinction of buying the same things, yet charging Englewood residents for things that otherwise we would have had for free. Is there anything here that I'm saying which is untrue?
No.
Councilman, no, that's that is correct. It's a fluid list, so it benefits us to be able to have the authority to go in there and try to obtain these things. And just to reiterate, the list you're provided with, that's what we're seeking. The things we've gotten in the past: cameras, overhead projectors, the laptop computers that are the employees at City Hall utilized during COVID, generators, TVs, things like that, and then on top of that, the computers, generators, there's things like transit signal devices, kind of like the one that we used up on East Palisade Avenue after Ida, that portable stop sign, traffic indicator, things like that are available, medical first aid equipment, personal protective equipment. Those are the types of things that we're looking to get. So you were correct in that.
And just to reconfirm, either from Yancy or from Sonia, we have a resolution from years ago specifically saying the things that we do not want purchased, so that we don't have to run through them yet again. Is that accurate?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Right.
I believe so, though.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Cohen. Councilman Hamer, again, thank you for your patience.
Of course. So my issue has never been not acquiring the things that the city needs, the police department needs. The issue has always been our oversight and responsibility for the things that do come here, and to give carte blanche to the police department and deputy chief. There's no reflection, a negative reflection on you or anybody. It's just that we are ultimately responsible for the things that we approve coming in here. And if we don't have any responsibility for it, and if we don't have any sense of what's coming through the door, then items such as that monster military truck that was not hidden, but no one seemed to know anything about it behind the DPW garage, and any other things that may come through the door that wouldn't pass muster, don't get to be seen. It's all dealt with on a reactive basis, which I don't think we need to give up responsibility for. I think we have total responsibility for stepping in and at least seeing what's coming through the door. And we've not gotten that respect. So the ask was, and no, there was not a list of things that, we didn't want, because that list would have been, too restrictive. The agreement was that we were going to get a list of those things that were coming or requested, so that, we could see what's coming here, and not once has that happened. So
We have it
the
now.
ask, I'm sorry, I'll be finished in a minute and you can share all that you need. The ask was that we have, some understanding with, not even some, but we'd have a direct understanding and a list of the things that were being requested on a fluid basis, because as was said, you don't know what's going to be available and at what time. It's not a once a year list. It's a fluid list of things that become available, that you make requests, the police department would make a request for. And again, giving over responsibility for that and not even wanting to see it is something I think we should not do. So that's been my opposition and remains my opposition. So it was turned down last year. And rather than, us coming up with, some sort of arrangement that was comfortable for the police department and city manager, so that the information would come our way, even if it's on a fluid basis or an all-encompassing list, which cannot happen because you don't know what's going to be on the list. We still haven't had any discussion about it. And now it's back on as a resolution, and it may pass. I'm just telling you that it makes absolutely no sense for us to abnegate our responsibility and allow for, everything to be purchased without any kind of transparency. That's my comment.
Just one point of correction. My understanding is these are things.
Councilman Cohen, can we see if anyone else wants to speak? Just
Sure.
Yeah, Councilwoman Marin.
I believe, Wayne, that there is a list, Deputy Chief Greeley can better describe it, but there was a list, and I think Yancy said that she did send it out, but it was late. But we do have a list of categories and items. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, yes, Councilman
So
Cohen.
in response,
Okay.
I'm sorry, in response to the fact that there is a list that came out at 5:30 this afternoon, or at least a PDF that came out at 5:30 this afternoon. That doesn't change things. It's just, setting up whatever the protocol is, so that we all can be on the same page, and that if there is going to be any measure of accountability, because ultimately we're the ones responsible for approving it. And if we do it, then it's on us, which is how it's supposed to be. But if it's going to be on us, then, we need to have some sort of procedure in place, instead of, just flat carte blanche approval to bring anything in that anyone wants.
Yeah, Councilman Cohen.
Well, first of all, it was made mention here a few moments ago that these are things that we purchase. Deputy Chief, these are things that we acquire for free, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So there's no purchasing involved. There's no money coming from the city whatsoever, correct?
No, these items, though, after a year, we can sell any items that we're not using and bring the money in. So at that point, we could make money off it, but we're not putting any money out for the items.
So basically, if we wanted, theoretically, we could authorize you and trust you, because to me, quite frankly, I trust my department heads. If I don't trust my department heads, they shouldn't be department heads. And if I can't trust I know that each of our department heads have heard this conversation ad nauseum for year after year after year. If I can't trust that our deputy chief, having heard this conversation year after year after year after year, doesn't understand the will of the council here, and when he puts this together, then that's the bigger problem. I do trust him. So and to me, I look at it this way, very simply. You know what? Just like he said, anything that you decide you don't want afterwards, you have a problem with, You can sell in a year. So you know what? To me, first of all, I trust him. He understands what we can and can't, what the desire and the will of the council is. He's not bringing in water cannons. He's bringing in computers and phone equipment. Okay, that's first of all.
Okay,
Second,
I just wanted, so
and
Councilman Cohen, can we hear
every
from
time we
some
procrastinate
others?
with a list saying, let's do it the next meeting, the things he's written.
Councilman, you
Huh?
froze.
Oh.
You froze.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
And now we can.
Hello? Okay, I'm not sure where I lost you.
Yeah, I'm hoping
So-
to move the meeting along just so we can get to, because we do have a hard
Yeah,
stop.
just very quickly, I am in very strong support of, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with my internet. But I'm in very strong support of this. I think not taking free basic equipment that our deputy chief that we trust knows this, says we should have, that if for some reason somebody here decides they don't want us to use, we can box and keep and sell in a year. When the alternative is getting the same equipment that we need and charging the residents for it. I for the life of me don't understand why we would not vote yes, and I will vote yes on this.
Okay. Councilman Cobb, did you have any comments?
Well, listen, I was here at the beginning of this 1033, and I made my comments known, and I'm making now. And to get something at 5 p.m., and I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, I didn't have the opportunity to read. But more importantly, something this important should have went back for discussion first. I don't care what anybody says in terms of, we've discussed it ad nauseum. I think that when we do things like this that are important, we should have a discussion about that. And everybody is entitled to their own opinion. So that's what I had. But I will say this, we got a truck that we didn't know about, and we got some other equipment that we didn't know about, and we still haven't been told about it. So, I think that that's the concern about it all. And if it's that important that, anything that we're purchasing or getting access to, we should have a discussion and it should be discussed first, not just put back on something as a vote for it. And I don't think people are standing in the way of it. I think it's the way the process is that's formulated around how we're going about that. And that's my comment.
All right. So Deputy Chief, would you be able to come back maybe over the summer and inform us what we've received and what the disposition of the items has been?
Yeah, Council President, I was actually just going to mention, I know you want to move things along, so I won't beat a dead horse here. But I can't speak to what was done in the past. All I know is the items we acquire, we have to keep diligent account of, and which officers assign them or where we store them and the time periods. So we do keep a ledger of all the items we're required to. So I have no problem forwarding that to the city manager and having her disseminate that. If you guys want that quarterly, or just depending upon how we bring things in, we can kind of work that out as we go. But if that helps you guys out at all, absolutely, we're willing to do that.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I just froze for a second. Where were we on this? I'm sorry.
So I think it's been moved and seconded, so I think we can go to a vote now.
Okay.
Yes,
All right. Roll call, please.
Councilman Cobb,
No.
Councilman Cohen,
Yes.
Councilman Hamer,
No,
Councilwoman Maren,
yes,
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. All right. So moving on to Resolution 82, recognizing March as Women's History Month. Do I have a motion?
second.
moved.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Hamer, Maren. Do we have any comments about it? If anyone wanted to speak to it?
I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay, yeah, just giving people the opportunity. All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen,
Yes.
Councilman Hamer,
Yes,
Councilwoman Maren,
Yes,
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. Finally, oh, not finally, excuse me, 83, the resolution honoring Fire Chief Eric Anderson. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second,
So Mayor Wilds, would you do us the honor of reading the resolution?
I would be honored to do so. I had the privilege earlier today to pay respects at the firehouse. Chief Anderson served our city nearly 40 years and deserves this wholeheartedly. Whereas the City of Englewood Fire Chief Eric Anderson will retire April 1, 2022, completing a career that spanned 38 years, a tenure that has been marked with distinction from the day he joined the department on March 19, 1984 as a firefighter through his promotion to fire chief on November 8, 2017. And whereas Chief Anderson's accomplishments are many and varied, including citations for bravery and heroism on numerous occasions, including a unit citation in 1991, a Heroism Award for Hurricane Floyd in 1999, a Heroism Award in 2000, and a Valor Award in 2007, and a 200 Club Valor Award in 2016. And whereas Chief Anderson has exhibited exceptional bravery and professionalism in the best tradition of the Englewood Fire Department by personifying selflessness, commitment, and the highest humanitarian ideals by responding to the national tragedy of the attack in the World Trade Center in 2001, Hurricane Sandy in 2012, and most recently led the Englewood Fire Department's rescue efforts during Hurricane Ida. And whereas Chief Anderson is married to Anna and they have two grown children, Eric and Christina, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and the City of Englewood, the City Council of the City of Englewood, Bergen County, New Jersey, commend Englewood Fire Chief Eric Anderson for his valuable years of service and leadership and extend their sincerest wishes for a long and happy retirement. Of course, we all wish him Godspeed, and I'm glad that he's being returned healthily and well to his family.
Any other comments or appreciation from the council? Yes, Councilman Cohen.
I think especially when somebody of this caliber, having served the city leaves, I think, it's incumbent upon all of us to really express our real appreciation. As I got to know him better when he became chief, you really see that this is somebody who was in his heart and soul, a firefighter for his entire life. Somebody who loves the city, somebody who cared about his department. Somebody who, never, let the rank get to his head. He was always accessible. He was always helpful. He always went the extra mile. Even most recently during Hurricane Ida, when the fire department and others had to help, get 56 children out of windows onto boats, out of Yeshiva or Simcha, he was there, and he was there for the entire city, in its entirety, it's a bittersweet day because on one hand, you don't want to see somebody of his quality go, but you also are very much appreciative of the service that he's given for the decades that he has. I don't want to really mix this up with something else, but I know we don't have another opportunity because it's a workshop meeting. So I just, I normally would wait for council comments on what I'm about to say, but there's no other opportunity in this format today. But I do want to also make sure, to congratulate our new appointment of Deputy Chief Jeff Kaplan to the department. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it today, being that his appointment was in the middle of the day. It's a very proud day in Englewood when we talk about making sure that our entire city is represented, and by its entire diverse community. I spoke to Jeff Kaplan earlier today, just to personally congratulate him being unable to make the meeting earlier. He is, first of all, the first time in the history of Englewood that we have a Jewish chief or deputy chief in either of our police or fire departments ever. And that's a big first. That's something that I'm very proud. When he was, am I talking to him? I didn't realize that when he first got appointed to the fire department, he was the first Jewish person on the fire department. Now there's, I believe, one other, but him reaching, one more ceiling that our city has broken today. I'm just very proud that the great we continue a legacy in our fire department, hopefully, from Anderson and now to Kaplan, well, obviously in different positions, but still, but that we have something as a city there to be proud of who we had and who we have coming in. So I really wish Chief Anderson the best wishes for him and his family in his retirement, and and congratulations on a career well served of Englewood. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Yes, Councilwoman Maren.
I too would like to add my congratulations to the chief. We have been very, very fortunate to have an experienced, capable, honorable chief, and I too wish him only good things and an exciting future, and he certainly has earned it, and thank you.
Any other comments? All right, then I'll finish up. I haven't had the opportunity to have too much interaction with Chief Anderson just because of COVID. I think he only knows me as helping with the fire at 21 Angle last spring, and I was the crazy guy running past who said hello as if I knew him, and he had no idea who I was, but then he figured it out. But the bravery of the fire department during Ida, we know there were numerous casualties across New Jersey, and the fact that Englewood, thank God, was spared any casualties is in no doubt due to the bravery of our fire department, in addition to other departments. And I think that's a reflection of his leadership. So I'd like to thank him for his service there. And can we go to roll call, please?
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen,
Very proudly, yes.
Councilman Hamer,
Congratulations on your retirement. My vote is yes.
Councilwoman Maren,
Oh, yes.
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes, thank you. And again, congratulations, Chief. All right, so the final resolution for tonight is 84, appointment of members to the Board of Adjustment. Remember, we got this 2 weeks ago, just before our last council meeting, but I wanted to hold off the vote so people have a chance to look at it.
Just a point of order, Council President.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, but we're probably
Okay.
thinking the same thing.
Mr. Marin, that should be voted on separately as part of this resolution, just because Councilwoman Marin's is married to him. And in terms of the others, they can be voted on as a group if it's unanimous, but if anyone's kind of like a consent agenda would like any of those names pulled, they should be voted on separately as well.
And we could do all of them within the constraints of Resolution 84.
Yes.
Okay.
So is Judy not able to vote on David because she's vote yes or vote no?
You'll never know.
Yeah.
I just want to confirm everybody received their revised list from the mayor that was sent out.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And I'll second. So that the no issue with Ms. Marin seconding. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So the mayor has had an opportunity to change the list, I don't know how many times. The trouble I have with the list is the 4th ward doesn't have a voting member. How does that happen? You have 7 full members, 4 alternates, and the fourth ward doesn't have a full-time voting member. How's that?
So,
I just want to know. Somebody's got to explain to me.
Yeah.
I'm just voting on it.
so, we could potentially move Ms. Thomas or Mr. Kelly to either Mr. Marin or Mr. Brown's and just flip them. We only have these 5 vacancies. So the two full spots are for the former chair and the current chair. But we can certainly make one of them an alternate and move up either Ms. Thomas or Mr. Kelly.
But that doesn't answer it. It's how do we get to a vote and the fourth ward doesn't have representation?
We're only able
That's
to
the
vote
problem.
on.
No,
we're
that's the
only able to
problem.
vote on
But
this
you
right
can,
now,
but you can change this. But what I'm saying to you is that you have to fix that problem.
So we can fix it right
and-
now. We could switch out Mr. Marin or Mr. Brown with Ms. Thomas or Mr. Kelly and get one of them as a full member if that's the council's pleasure. So
I
so
guess
we
first you have to have the consent of the
No.
mayor.
Well,
I would consent to that. I have no problem with that. I have to tell you.
It's not a matter of consent. It's a matter of the oversight is to not have a representation in the fourth ward. And this thing has been passing back and forth and nobody has said anything. And I have the answer because I have somebody who will step aside outside of the names that you said. But the point is, this should never happen again going forward. Never. Every ward should be represented appropriately. Every ward.
Mr. Cobb, quite honestly, I put out publicly that I was looking for appointments and I sought fourth ward representation. I asked, and I can give you a list in private session of the 5-6 people that I consider to be leaders in the fourth ward, and nobody wanted to serve. So
Yeah, but
if you have a name, I'd happy to.
no, but here's the thing. You have 2 names there that were on the list. One of those names should have been moved to a voting member.
So move them to a voting member. I have no objection.
One of them should have been moved to a voting member. I'm just saying the fourth ward has no representation.
So
Charles, we can do that right now.
Listen,
At your wish.
I'll say this to you. Reverend Spencer said he would be an alternate.
But
willing
he's
to
not
be
on
an
the list. He's not up for vote tonight.
Well,
So we
could change it. I mean, he said he'd be an alternate because of his travel schedule. So, however you want to fix it. And I think the councilman of the fourth ward who doesn't have any representation should have some voice in this conversation as well.
Well, first of all, Mr. Cobb, if you don't mind, they all have votes. The practice, and I served in the Board of Adjustment in 1997. They have the right to vote and they participate.
Only if somebody's absent. Only if somebody's absent. They're alternates.
No, sir, their votes are cast.
They're alternates.
I understand, but their vote
You
is
understand?
cast.
Well, listen, all I'm saying to you is we fix it. If we don't fix it, my vote is no. I'll be very clear up front.
I have no objection if you want to fix it.
So Charles, we could only discuss these 5 people. This is the resolution. And I think we're all fine with moving. So there's a bit of a typo on the list. Ms. Java is alternate number 2.
Well, just to,
Ms. Thomas is alternate number 3, and Mr. Kelly is alternate number 4. We can easily switch Ms. Thomas and Mr. Kelly with Mr. Marin and Mr. Brown. The mayor said he had no issue with that, and then then those 2 people would be full voting members. If that's your.
Wouldn't it be better if we let them sit them and then whoever the leadership is in the planning board, the Board of Adjustment, make the changes or recommend the change?
No.
We're responsible for it.
No, they can recommend it, Mr. Bailey.
If I can just interject, zoning board appointments are different than planning board appointments under the municipal land use law. Planning board, as you guys know, they're all mayoral appointments with the exception of the council, the class 3, the council liaison. Zoning board under the municipal land use law and the city chart or city code, actually, the mayor, and this is typical statewide, the mayor nominates who he or she would like, and then the council has to endorse some, none, or all of them. If after 30 days, the council does not endorse them, it's purely the council's decision as to who to put on the zoning board.
Yeah, please, Mr. Cohen.
I just want to say something. At the end of the day, the office of the mayor, just as the offices of the council, need to be respected for what they are in the charter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that everybody agrees with everybody. It doesn't mean, and there are plenty of wrong or right decisions made every day. But at the end of the day, the charter is clear, and the intent of the charter is clear. That even in our weak mayoralty of a city, these are the functions of the mayor to make these appointments, and we can agree with them. We can disagree with them. We can call them out as right.
Not the zoning board.
No, I'm saying, well, right? Aren't these the appointments of the mayor?
No.
Your recommendations.
As I just said, under the municipal land use law and the city charter and code.
So if we disagree with them, we can disagree with them and do what we want. I mean, I guess I just, I think I just think the office of the mayor should have the proper respect. Regardless of who sits in that chair, I think that there's a respect to the office. And if we want to do something else that's we're able to do within the charter, then so be it.
Dr. Rosenzweig, if I may, I just want it stated that I have no skin in the game who gets the job, so long as we get diligent professionals. And what I mean by professionals, people that are vested from their vantage point in serving. It's been very difficult to find people. Arnold Brown stood down because the commitment even through Zoom was overwhelming. He indicated that he would serve now on the library board, which is wonderful for us. And I put out word, and I got people that I thought, and people that I disagree with for a lot of different reasons, but nonetheless are leaders in the community. I reached out to them and asked if they would serve, pastors, rabbis, professionals, people who understand real estate. Ms. Giva is a civil engineer. I'm moving over from the planning board because I think there is a need for such a professional in the planning board, given the applications that they have and the floods that we have. So, again, I'll support the council's move and finding a citizen that wants to serve. I just don't want the residents that have volunteered to feel that they're being shuffled around and being appreciative. I also want you to know that I called Adam Brown and I told him that I wouldn't resist putting him back on whatever issues that I had, because he's on the marijuana board, the SID, and a few other things. If he can absorb the responsibility and he does a smart job about it, then I would support his candidacy. So I'm not resisting anybody. Good luck trying to find people who really love to serve, because it's such not a debilitating, but it's such a big responsibility. So whatever you come up with, I'm going to endorse, guys.
Mr. Bailey, I have a question for you. The 7 full members on the zoning board, or board of adjustment rather, if there's a vote taken, their votes fully count. Alternate members, what happens with their vote? Is that considered part of the full vote, or what's your understanding?
Usually not. And I will discuss this with Mr. Rutherford, the zoning board attorney. And I would also like to take a look at the zoning board's bylaws to see what they provide. But in other municipalities, generally speaking, the alternates only vote when a sitting member, one of the 7, the Magnificent 7, is absent.
So the point though is this,
but I do need to check.
No one's asking, I'm sorry, you were saying, Mr. Bailey?
I'm sorry, I do need to check the bylaws though of the zoning board.
No one's saying that we don't have, we need to find another member to serve on the Board of Adjustment. The comment is that a sitting member who is a full member has, offered to, change his designation to alternate, which would allow a member from each ward to serve as a full member on this Board of Adjustment, which is, in its face, absolutely fair. So we don't need to get rid of anyone who's on the Board of Adjustment and need to find a new member. We've got a full complement. We just need to change the designations, which, one of the alternates has already agreed to do, which would allow for a member of a resident from the 4th Ward to serve as a full member of the board.
Dr. Rosenzweig, I
Yeah.
appointed or nominated Mr. Kelly and Ms. Thomas in the last few years go round. So I have no objection whether they're full members or alternates. I can tell you, Mr. Bailey, that the experience has been, at least when I served and for years later, that the alternates vote is cast and that it's only counted if there is an inadequate amount. Let's remind ourselves that Councilwoman Rosenberg suggested that we have a supermajority of alternates because there was a problem with attendance and some of the important applications had to be put off because people weren't showing up. So I have no problem reconstituting the makeup of the board with the constellation of people that are there. That's why I moved Ms. Giva over, because she shows up to meetings and she has what to add because of her, because of her professionalism and experience. So again, Dr. Rosenzweig, you put forward a slate. If that's for vote, I would ask that you cast the votes this evening. If you have the 3 votes, just put it to rest.
And then, I think we need to confirm if someone on the board wants to step into the alternate, and we could switch, and that could easily be a resolution at a future meeting, right?
Yes.
Bailey, what do you need from the alternate there?
What do I?
Right, the person who's a full voting member right now, do they have to send something in writing?
Yeah, or if someone asks them that.
But they told me, Reverend Spencer already told me that today.
Yeah, it would help if it's in right, just that, so there's no,
Okay,
confusion or anything.
okay, but
Okay,
to clear,
so
but to
let's
clear
vote
the
on this.
point, let me just finish this. To clear the point, as it's constituted right now before we vote, the 4th Ward did not have a voting member, and that was my point. All this other noise doesn't matter. My point was this. Now, everybody else can make whatever points they want, and they're entitled to make that. But every ward should have a full voting representative. That's what it was. And right now, as it's constituted, before we take a vote, the 4th Ward does not, because the alternate, the only way they vote is that people are absent.
Okay, so we can
happened.
we can change that right now if you wish. We would need to move up, we can move up Ms. Thomas and Mr. Kelly right now. We're not going to discuss a 6th name until we get a confirmation. We can move up Ms. Thomas or Mr. Kelly right now and move Mr. Marin or Mr. Brown to alternate. We can do that right now and have it constituted the way you want. Just tell me which names to move and we'll do it this instant.
It's not for me to make those moves by myself, jointly. I'm just saying,
Well, do
we
I
have
have
to
a
put somebody in the
motion?
4th Ward.
Do I have
ask the
a motion to make a
Wayne?
move and then we can
Councilman
take a
Hamer?
vote on moving it? Again, moving the names around. If someone has a suggestion, let's have a motion for it and then we can vote on that.
I think the suggestion that makes the most sense is to get the information from the full member who is willing to become an alternate and put forth a slate that, we've had given time to consider or reconsider, and then present it, and then everyone can be in support of it and move it forward that way.
Well, when we get that letter, we can Mr. Bailey just told us it'll be a quick resolution to move that around with just the 2 names. So that won't be an issue.
Okay, well,
But there was a concern about what it's going to be at the end of this meeting. And we can, and it would still be at the end of the meeting if we don't make that motion. So that's why I brought that up.
But that would
because
only
that
be
was-
one, that would only be one person from the fourth ward, Dr. Rosenzweig. If they really wanted to put more than one, you can do another one today, independent of that request. You
That's
can
true
move,
too.
you can move Mr. Marin or Mr. Brown, one of them, into an alternate position. It doesn't really matter. And have two people then from the fourth ward if it's so important. I want you to understand, I can go through the demographics very easily because I studied them myself, and I was very frustrated by the fact that I couldn't find, the right constellation, but I found professionals and people who wanted to serve. The Board of Adjustment, Ken Sinkire is from the 3rd Ward, 3rd District. Matteo Duque is from the 1st Ward, 4th District. Arnold Brown was 3rd, and Adam Brown was 2nd. Eddie Spencer is 2nd Ward. Angelina Rivera is 2nd Ward. Juanita Harris is 2nd Ward. Buri Moshe is 1st. David Marin is the 3rd. And Teresa and Tom are the 4th. So there's a minority of 1st Ward attendees to the Board of Adjustment. My suggestion is take Mr. Marin or Mr. Brown and put them as an alternate and pick another 4th Ward person if that's what the council desires tonight. If Reverend Spencer is so inclined, then you'll have a second one. At least then you'll have 2 4th Ward full voting members. If that's important to the council, I think you should do it this evening. At least
should
get
be-
halfway.
But it should be important to the city that we have balanced representation.
No, sir.
Not
It
to this
should be
council.
important that it should be
No, it
important that we have
should
the
be
right
impor-
people to serve.
No.
It doesn't
It should be
matter.
important that we have the right representation, especially when a lot of development is going on in the 4th Ward. And that's what I'm saying. And right now, the 4th Ward doesn't have a voting member. Those are facts.
Okay, so
We're not going to
Charles, tell
dispute the
us,
facts.
tell us
So
what
pick
to
one.
do with these 5 names right now.
Yeah, pick one now.
Let's just do
Listen,
it.
if it's up to me, we put Reverend Spencer in, we make him an alternate, as
So
he said.
Reverend
And we move
Spencer,
Tom, we put Tom Kelly in Reverend Spencer's place. And then, and we leave Adam Brown and Dave Marin where they're at as full voting members, and we're done.
so we can do that at the next meeting once we get confirmation
Okay.
from Reverend Spencer.
Well, we can do that with
Okay.
the next meeting. All right, sounds good.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yep.
All right, then. So we'll separate Mr. Marin because of the conflict of interest there. And is it okay if we leave the other 4 as a consent approval?
Just for my own clarification, the other 4, we're talking about now making them full members, but potentially them being changed to alternate or
No,
no?
so here's what's going to happen. I'm sorry for the confusion. So at this vote, it'd be Mr. Marin
Right,
will be separately voted on for full member. Mr. Brown for full member. Ms. Gava, alternate number 2. Thomas, alternate number 3. Kelly, alternate number 4. And then, because you see, there are 2 alternate number 3s just in the transcription. If we get the confirmation from the Reverend at the next meeting, we'll move Mr. Kelly up and and the Reverend down to alternate number 4. So we just don't have that letter confirmation. So I think just to dot the i's and cross the t's, we should get that.
okay.
All right, then. All right, so
Councilman
can we
Hammond,
have a
you okay
roll
with that?
call on? Yeah?
Hmm?
I'm sorry?
Councilman Heyman's shaking his head.
Oh, no, I'm not going to support it, but I'll wait until it gets straightened out because I'm not sure that, people won't change their minds between now and then. So
Right.
I'll wait until then. You guys
Yep.
carry on. I'll vote yes when we change it to.
Well, I'm voting
Make it-
yes.
make
Yeah,
it
that's
proper.
what I'm saying. We got to vote yes. I think we fix it all at one time. I'm under the impression of that. I know how the going back and forth is, but the more important was to bring this imbalance here, and I'm troubled by what was said. So let's go.
Or we could move Mr. Kelly up right now. Again, that's an opportunity. Okay, so let's call the vote on Mr. Marin separately, and then we'll do the other 4 as a consent.
Okay, so we had the motion and second. This
Yeah,
is the roll call for Mr. Marin.
correct.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen,
Yes.
Councilman Hamer,
I'll vote no. I'll vote on all of it at the same time. No, thank you. No.
Councilwoman Maren.
Recuse.
I don't believe she can.
She has to say abstain. Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. And so now we'll do the other four, please.
Bill, do we need a separate motion and second for them?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, not each one, but,
So for
well,
the-
it doesn't sound like it's good. Not getting the sense it's going to be unanimous, so it should be a separate vote on each one then.
For
What?
each individual member? I was just asking if you needed a motion and a second, because that closed out the one motion and second, so now we need a motion and
I
second.
need a motion and a second,
Why don't we take, because these are all new, these are all.
but
this is-
if
this-
someone doesn't want to vote.
Okay, so let's just to make sure it's all clear, we'll do each member individually,
Yeah,
just so that there's no questions. And now Ms. Maren would be able to vote.
So
Correct.
did we do the moving ups or?
Why don't we just vote, why don't we just,
Because it's on the agenda tonight and we can change it at the next meeting, once we get the confirmation, which is appropriate.
I'm not wrestling through that.
The
Okay.
way we're voting though, are we voting with the folks being moved up and changed around that we talked about?
There was no suggestion of changing anyone around now. So
I would vote on each one.
Once we hear
separately.
if there's a Board of Adjustment member who wants to move down to alternate, and we get that confirmation at the next meeting, we'll rearrange it and we'll fix that up.
Wait.
The problem with that is that we're still where we're at, doesn't fix the problem.
So why don't we
That's
just
the problem.
rearrange this now?
So let's move Mr. Brown down to alternate now. We just voted on Mr. Marin, and we can move Mr. Kelly up to full member right now then.
Okay.
So just to be clear, Adam Brown will be alternate number 2 to replace David.
No, he'll be alternate number 4 to replace Mr. Kelly as alternate number 4. And Mr. Kelly will be regular member number 7.
Okay. So he'll be.
All right.
alternate 4.
So do we have a motion from Mr. Kelly as a regular member of the Board of Adjustment?
So moved.
And I'll second that.
This is to do,
So Mr. Kelly as a regular member, and now Mr. Brown will be an
Okay.
alternate.
okay.
And
So
if we get
we do
someone who wants to move down, we can make Mr. Brown a full member and that person the alternate instead. Okay, so we have a motion. Can we take a roll call, please?
I just want to be clear, what is this motion for?
For Mr. Tom Kelly of 344 West Englewood Avenue to be a full member of the Board of Adjustment.
For Mr. Kelly only?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, do a roll call?
Please.
You gotta have a motion, right? Second?
There was. a
We did.
motion.
You did
Ms. Marin
that.
moved and I seconded it.
So this is just to move Kelly to regular member, correct?
Yeah, we're going to vote on each person individually.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yep.
Councilman Hamer,
No.
Councilwoman Maren,
Yes.
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. So now, do I have a motion from Ms. Gava to finish up the term of alternate number 2? So less than a year.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen,
Yes.
Councilman Hamer,
No.
Councilwoman Maren,
Yes.
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. Do I have a motion for Ms. Thomas as alternate number 3.
And just to be clear, so the thought process is that we would ultimately move her up at our future meeting to,
Or
Would somebody
we
else
could,
be
or we
there?
can move Mr. Brown up at a future meeting.
I'm saying,
If some-
but with Miss, I'm saying with the Miss Thomas thing, that's Teresa, we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
So I'm saying the thought process here is that because we don't have we don't have the physical document that says about other people that we're gonna do this right now, we can always change that at a future
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, fine.
But once you appoint someone a regular member, they're going to have to be willing to step down, though.
Well, it sounds like we have a regular member who's willing.
Who's already in place, yeah.
Okay.
But again, I don't have confirmation of that, so
Well, I'm telling you, he called me and I talked to him. So, I mean, if that's not confirmation enough, then I don't know what that
Yeah,
means.
I mean, I completely trust you, but yeah, I think we need to just follow the process
What's the process? Because there is no process, but what's the process?
to get a
'Cause
letter.
I
saying
asked
that
Bill what the process was, and he said, I said, do you need a letter or do you need anything?
we could get a letter.
No, I said,
stating
I'm the
that.
one who said, do you need a letter or whatever? So I don't know.
Does the law require you to have a letter? No.
Right.
Is
Okay.
it good practice? Sure. Just
Okay,
to
so
make sure there's no confusion.
so did we have a motion and second on Ms. Thomas?
So moved.
And I second that.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen. Councilman Cohen,
Yes.
Councilman Hamer,
No,
Councilwoman Maren,
Yes,
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. And for the final, for Mr. Brown as alternate number 4. Do I have a motion?
so moved.
I second that. Roll call, please.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen.
Yep.
Councilman Hamer,
no,
Councilwoman Maren,
Yes,
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. Okay, thank you all. So on to resolutions for discussion. Many of these will need to be done in a closed session. But the ones at the bottom of the list, maybe Yancy or Sonia can discuss the Jersey Grant Program funded by PSE&G.
Yancy?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was a request from the Environmental Commission. They're looking for a grant to purchase bags for the new state law that takes effect in May for the no plastic bags. So it's part of, it's to promote that campaign for it.
Okay, so this will be a resolution at the March 15th meeting?
Yes, we have enough time to get it in before that, the deadline, so yes.
Okay. Bill, can you tell us about the S330?
I am actually not familiar with that. No, I had spoken to Yancy earlier.
Oh. This is the swift passage of the Restore Energy Tax Receipts.
Michael, would you happen to know that?
Oh, Michael, yeah, excuse me, Michael. This is,
Michael Kaufman.
yeah, he's coming on.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at that, the resolution.
So I think this is
Or-
one that we pass every year, asking for the,
No,
This is new. This is a new bill that's
okay.
gone in
no, this is
front of
new.
the assembly. So pretty much in the past, I'm just going off the resolution, gas and electric utilities would have taxes collected by the municipalities, and the municipalities were able to use that money. Then they passed a law saying the state would collect all that money with the intent of giving some of that money back to the municipalities. That never happened. So now the legislation is to go back to the way it was, where the municipalities collect these taxes and keep, I don't know if it's a portion of the money or all of the money.
Could we have clarification at our next meeting?
So this is
Yeah.
pretty much just a bill, and it's just to support the bill. It's pretty much almost passed anyway. All right.
Okay.
Okay. And Michael, maybe you could, I think the emergency temporary appropriation is, you're the best one to address that?
Yeah, that's just amending the temporary budget that we passed in the beginning of the year. You're only allowed to do up to 26.25% of the previous year's budget when you do a temporary budget in the beginning of the year. So we're just amending it until the budget's actually adopted. So it's using similar numbers plus to pay pension. So pension is high, it's $4 or $5 million. If we had to include that in the first temporary budget, we would have been over the 26.25%. So we just add money for the departments to use for salaries and pays the pension.
Okay, so that'll be a resolution at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any questions from the council on these three resolutions? Okay, so we're going to have some ordinances at the next meeting. Sonia, did you want to address the violations clerk?
What this would include is a violations clerk too. Right now, we have a violations clerk position, but it would, after discussions with the court administrator and HR, the appearance of that would probably be best because there's a step to this. And in recent negotiations, the violations clerk is hopefully going to remove itself from the bargaining unit, and therefore we would need to include it in the salary ordinance. So that's why we have that on here.
Okay. Any questions about that to Ms. Alves Viveros?
Just one question. So removing it, I'm sorry, will you just explain that last part again? I just got choked. Just explain that last part that you said you need to move it into a different category. What's the rationale for that?
Because it's not in the salary ordinance, it's in the collective bargaining agreement, but that will soon come to a conclusion with the new agreement. So we have to put it into the salary ordinance.
Is that the only position in the city or in the court that is, being handled that way, or will we do others?
For now, this is the one, but what I have tasked the CFO with is just to review the salary ordinance in general, because it's probably best to look at all the positions and make the changes at once. So I might have to hold off on getting this one done. However, there is urgency to hire someone over at the court because there have been some resignations. So I don't want to delay this necessarily, but at some point this year, you'll have this up for discussion again, just to relook at the positions. And that's just to revisit the names of the positions as well as the salaries themselves.
Okay, so there's urgency with this position, but a review is going to take place for other positions that may be changed because of whatever the collective bargaining you discussed earlier. Is that what's happening?
Yes.
Thank
Right. Thank you. So Bill, can you discuss the crane ordinance?
Yes, sir. The crane ordinance, the mayor had brought this up last year and had obtained samples from other municipalities that have these crane ordinances, which what we did was reformatted it to fit Englewood. And essentially what it does is it kind of memorializes the various federal and state legislation governing cranes, but it just puts it in our ordinance and requires, for example, certain insurance limits, things like that, notices to the city in the event that there's a defect or an accident with the crane. And again, these all go in conjunction with OSHA and other federal laws, and it's the national Commission for the Certification of Crane Operators. It just memorializes that crane operators in the city have to have all of the required certificates and demonstrate that they have that to get a permit to operate a crane in the city.
Mr. Bailey, are you
Right.
saying every time you operate a crane, you have to get a permit?
Yes, yeah.
So every time Cousins operates his crane on behalf of the city, who's gonna pay for that permit? And who's gonna get that permit? DPW? We
I don't know.
use that
I don't
tree,
know-
we
I don't
use
know
that
who-
tree guy.
I don't know who.
He's the tree removal guy, and we use him a lot. So we're
Okay.
gonna make it tough for him to work for the city to get those permits? How's that gonna work?
Well, like any construction permit or any work that's done in the city, there
This
are
guy
permits
works
that
for
need
the
to be taken.
Yeah, but this guy
He's
works for the city
contracted
so
by the
much. He's
city.
contracted, right? So who's right? So he works for the city. If you see the bills and claims, he does a lot of work for the city. So every time he does that, he's gonna get a. When we have a tree that falls during a storm, he's gonna have to get a permit from the city to remove that tree. I don't think we want to make it that hard for people that we used vendors. Maybe we should have something in there written that allows us to supersede that. I think we should put some more language in there because that guy, we use them a lot. We use those tree
Do
removal.
people we contract need to get permits?
Let me check with the building department and Franz as well, to see if this is actually contemplates tree removal cranes as well, or just simply construction cranes. But I see your point, Councilman Cobb,
Yeah, we use those guys a lot. We use
You
them
could
a lot.
eliminate it and make it by exception to include tree cranes.
I disagree. Cranes can be very dangerous, and it's very important that they be inspected and that the permit, and you be aware of every time they're being used. There's no reason why, when a tree is being removed or whatever, the company can go directly to the building department and get their permit easily. And the department can be aware of it, but the idea of eliminating any requirement when it has to do with cranes, in my opinion, is very dangerous. I wouldn't do that. And it's very common for companies who work for the city to get permits. If somebody is building something for the city, you want some oversight on what they're doing, and that's what the permit does for you. Because, anyway, I believe that you need.
I think that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is they do a lot of work for us in an emergency capacity. So we're gonna say, stop the horses on a Saturday or something. How are we gonna get a permit to move something?
Mr. Cobb, I believe emergencies are treated a little differently.
Well, that's not what that, if that resolution if that ordinance goes that way, then you have to have language in there to say that. That's what I'm saying.
Well, right, but in terms of emergencies, if we're just going to focus on emergencies,
But
anything would supersede an emergency. So what I would just suggest is that there's some consistencies, the same way that if we have a vendor doing work for the city and we use a lot of the same people for certain things, that there's a level playing field in terms of getting permits, because that should be consistent across the board.
What I'm saying is, if the city is contracting these people, then, listen, it's all about protecting the city. And what I'm saying, we use these guys so much and they're working for the city so much. So every time you're going to say, okay, this is what you're working for. So whoever DPW calls them, then they're going to have to jump through these hoops all the time. So that affects the process of moving whatever it is. And I'm just saying, you should be aware of that. I'm not saying that we should not have safety measures and all that in there. I'm just talking about the process that's involved with that. And based on the ordinance, what we're saying in there too. If the ordinance is saying in emergency situations, then it should be that. So Mr. Bailey said he would look into that.
Yeah,
I think we need to look into the language of the ordinance.
Yeah, I will, but paragraph 2A does say in emergent situations, the building inspector may waive this requirement for a permit.
Okay, so every time they get a tree, that's what I'm saying. Every time they move a tree, they're gonna have to go there. So then we gotta put that in our policies and procedures, and they understand that this is what you gotta do going forward, right?
Can
Yeah,
I
Ms.
just
Marin?
suggest that we find out how some of the other cities handle this? You know, some of the larger cities like Hackensack or maybe Teaneck. I would just like to know how they handle it because you
Yeah.
know there's got to
Right.
be some way. You know, most companies that work with the city build the cost of the permit into their fee. I mean, I don't understand why you're nervous about having them get a permit. It's done very quickly.
It's the
when you
free,
want it to
what
be.
I'm saying to you is it's the frequency in which we do this. And I'm saying, I'm not saying take any shortcuts. I'm not saying any of that. Take in consideration how much we use these guys and how often we use these guys with trees and all that considered. Listen, I'm not the person jumping through the hoops, but I'm just saying we have to understand what we're dealing with and making sure it lines up with whatever we want to do here. That's what I'm saying. That's all.
Mr. Bailey, most of the
Comment.
ordinance had to do with
Council President,
making sure that insurances and protections were in place for residents against the crane. So I don't care how often somebody comes in and what they're doing for us, it's meant to protect us under every circumstance of use. If you want to make exceptions, you can carve out exceptions. But the idea is this was a generic crane ordinance that's being used throughout the state to protect people from cranes and to make sure that they have enough money to compensate the city or residents in case there's an accident. So again, build whatever exceptions you want, but I would move it forward.
Mr. Hamer?
anyway, Mr. Bailey, the concern that I have with this is that emergencies don't always happen from 9 to 5. Our building department, may be able to respond, on a 24-hour basis, but overnight and, on weekends when no one's here, unless we have, a standard operating procedure so that the city manager can be called to make sure this gets done, or the head of DPW gets in touch with someone at buildings to get this resolved, then we create a greater emergency for the residents. So I'm in favor of every protection that should be in place, but if we have an emergency situation and contractors have to be called in to resolve something, many of the people that would have to work on these things, aren't nearby.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, the process remains the same, that in the emergency, there's a structure where the building officials involved, fire, and DPW. So I don't know what the question is in terms of that necessarily is, or where we're going with that, but the level of what it constitutes an emergency, we've never stopped a vendor from doing what they need to do. So I'm maybe I'm a little lost.
Yeah, I
got
mean, by
lost in
definition,
translation
the city would have to call in a contractor in an emergency. They're not just going to see something and just bring their crane over without telling anyone in the city that they're doing it. So there would be some leadership for that. Okay, so
go
we'll
forward as you
get
wish.
this ordinance. I'm sorry, who was talking?
No, I said go forward as you wish. I'm just asking, Mr. Bailey to look at situations that may occur. Just like Ms. Marin pointed out, other municipalities have to do the same things. If there is something that takes place when it's not 9 to 5, we just need to be prepared, and we shouldn't, put into an ordinance something that's restrictive and would not allow for whatever needs to happen to take place. That's all. Just
Yeah,
that simple.
I'll certainly do that, and also speak to, our building department, Ed Roy, Franz, to see just kind of what they're aware of in terms of things like that, where something comes, 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday or Saturday morning. How can that be dealt with? Is it dealt with? What protocols they have in place, and also look at some of our neighboring towns of similar size as to how they deal with it.
And this is why we're discussing it before we have the first reading. So,
Yeah, no, this is very helpful,
Yeah.
for me.
Ms. Marin?
Yeah, you might also want to check with our insurance company and what their requirements are. Just a thought.
Will do.
Okay, so the next items for discussion, the first two will be in closed session. So we have a lot for closed session tonight. And we've gotten referred by the planning board requests for change of zoning regulations on 3 properties. So Bill, what would be the next step for this?
Well, I reviewed the reports that were forwarded to us from the planning board that were presented to the planning board by Mr. Reiner, I believe it is, the planner. And, the issue is whether these properties should be rezoned and or deemed areas in need of redevelopment along the lines of what we've done on a couple other properties over the years. Procedurally, the way it's done is if the city wanted to entertain that, they would introduce an ordinance to that effect. There has been an investigation done and an analysis of whether it meets the criteria under the local housing and redevelopment law. But it then would have to get referred back to the planning board to either ratify or confirm the studies that were presented and then back for a public hearing before the governing body. Once it's deemed an area in redevelopment, the next process is the city then has to decide on a redevelopment plan. What does it want to see there? That type of thing. And we did it for ERA South, for example, but I think it was before Ken and Judy were on the council, but relating to rezoning some stuff there on the hotel pad and the parking garage pad, or the office pad rather. So that's really the next steps. Some of the questions are these properties going to be taken by eminent domain, or do the current owners of the properties want to be designated the redeveloper? Does the city want to make them the redeveloper? For example, the Russell C. Major Liberty School, the city effectively is the redeveloper because the city owns the property. So these things would have to be addressed. I saw some of the properties are along Overpeck Creek. I don't know if there's stream encroachment issues, which could affect the developability of the properties. So it'd be good to have it looked at by the city engineer for those types of issues as well. Oh, yes, Ms. Marin?
Just a few comments. I'll start out right away by telling you I'm totally opposed to all of it. I spent a long time going over these reports. I'm not going to go into detail now until we have a full-scale discussion, but I think it was interesting to me that the same architectural firm did the assessment of the properties, and there are 3 separate owners. So now that you mentioned Benecke's group, so I guess they're the ones who identified these properties. I think in some case I really am looking forward to a full-scale discussion because I think there are a lot of issues at play here, the least of which is the floodplains that are involved in some of the properties, the fact that you've got perfectly legitimate one-family houses on legal plots in a one-family district. As I said, I think this is definitely, I would like to see a very significant discussion because I think that this is a precedent that we've got to address immediately. And I was very disturbed by, I have to tell you, by these reports. That's it.
Bill, yeah, please, Mr. Hamer.
So I listened to the presentations at the planning board and didn't make any comment over there, of course, but I absolutely, agree with the assessment that before we build another piece of anything on any postage stamp size of property or, whatever it is and wherever it is, and these in particular happen to be right along the culvert or, the Overpeck Canal, 2 of these, and it's a real concern. We still got issues related to the apartment building on Palisade Avenue that was situated above the culvert and what happened there. So I think we need to take a real hard look. And actually, I am surprised that the planning board didn't take a deeper and harder look at those two parcels, or all three of the parcels that have been recommended before they came over to sort of assess what the potential issues might be. So I guess the whole idea, because it was a very fast referral over to the council for review, and it seems like the planning board should have been doing the review in depth before it even comes to us. So I'm really interested in exploring this a whole lot more.
Yeah, Mr. Cobb.
Yeah, I also attended that meeting, and anybody knows the history of these properties along Inglewood Avenue is that you could come by there and the owners used to be pumping water out before Ida, before the storm. They stay full with water, and we don't want to sanction building projects that are going to fail. They're along that same stream as 53 West Palisade Avenue is. All that's on that floodplain there. And this would just be failed projects. These areas should be left with open space. The two areas on Ivy Lane, the houses just need a little love on those two houses there. And they keep the character of that area intact. And like the green and white house is a beautiful actual house with the porch and all that, and the bi-swinger house. These are very good properties there. I don't know what that is. I don't think we should be just going to build just to sake to build or whatever. And I think I would encourage the planning board members to go visit these sites and see what they are, especially those ones on Inglewood Avenue, which would be it would be something that wouldn't be successful. They would have to really spend some money and time even trying to develop those, to get those up to standards, and they would just be failed projects, I believe, just like the other project that they're trying to build on Brook Avenue. So I would suggest that we read the reports and have this robust conversation about that. But more importantly, I think what I would like to suggest is everybody go down to these areas and look at these areas. When you walk away from there, you'll say, okay, I can make an informed decision. That's all.
So if I may, Dr. Rosenzweig, the
Yeah.
planning board, Doug Byrne, who's the lawyer for the planning board, didn't suggest that planning board members go visit these sites and take issue, but to see that the governing body has an interest in opining and seeing and learning more about this. And then if interested, to refer it to the planning board. And then of course, everybody would take a road trip and study it. It's a waste of oxygen and time for them to do it, only to find out that the council has a issue with it at a later time. The buck stops ultimately with the governing body. So I think Mr. Cobb's comments are well taken. And I think planning board members will go for a site visit and take the interest, but this is moving. I have no interest in any one of these projects, truthfully. This is moving because we want people to invest and improve, and we want to improve the infrastructure challenges we have and sustainability concerns and all the water down there. So if you give the planning board a green light to study this, or if you want to host them, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Rosenzweig, Mr. Byrne wants a green light from the council to have the planning board do this stuff, correct? They're not looking for it to be entertained now.
No, my sense was that he wanted us to study it. So Bill, would it be inappropriate for us to get a planner to look at this?
No, I think it would be good to have a planner look at it, as well as the city engineer. I haven't had an opportunity to speak to Franz about this because, and I'm not an engineer or a planner, but the proximity to the culvert or over the canal, there's likely DEP issues that could affect what can and can't be developed there anyway, that would preempt anything that the governing body would choose to do. So I'd like an opportunity to have Franz and, also a planner look at it, kind of, from whether these sites are even developable. Not the Ivy Lane, talking about those, but 50
Well, the
Willie.
Ivy Lane too, I think we need to,
Oh,
so
yeah.
maybe, maybe we can talk about, getting one of our planners to take a look at this and
Oh.
see if this is even viable.
Excuse me, I don't believe that that's appropriate because they're the ones who started the process in the first place. Yeah, I don't-
No, it would be someone we bring in.
Oh, I thought you said our planners, so,
No,
Okay.
the council get a planner for working for us to take a look at it and see what's viable.
So for the record, listening to the meeting that took place at the planning board, the developer had their planner, take a look at the sites, and they even spoke to flooding and DEP approvals and what could and could not be built at that point. So I think it would be helpful to take a look at some of that, either that testimony or I don't know if it was recorded or not, but take a look at some of that information that came out. But I just for the life of me don't understand why we're the ones that since that's not our mandate. Ultimately we've got to make the decision, but it's not our mandate to do planning. The planning board is the area that should be entertaining this and then providing us with information that makes sense, and then we move forward with getting whatever referrals we need back to them for a full review. I just it just seems a little bizarre that they just come up with properties and send them over for us to begin the process on seemingly from ground zero.
I believe we are the ones that would have to approve looking into it and creating this redevelopment zone or whatever around these properties. And between us, we could knock this out of the box. It never goes any further without bothering to spend money on a planner. I mean, do you need a planner to tell you that when you're going next to Overpeck Creek or whatever it's called, that it's not a great idea? I mean, I think this is so obvious that I wouldn't want to spend a nickel going one step further. This is, as I say, I beg of you, if you haven't read the whole report, spend the time to read it. You don't have to be an engineer to figure this out. I'm very much opposed to all three. I would vote no. I don't care how many planners. I heard planners talk about other properties where some of the statements were so obviously, I don't want to characterize it. The bottom line is, please, everybody on the council, read those reports carefully, and you decide whether you think we should spend another $1 on a planner to tell us that this is nonsense. That's
Well,
my opinion.
if I may, Dr. Rosenzweig, Ms. Marin, if these are already fledgling and indigent properties, which they've been, they're blighted, and we do nothing about them, something bad can go to worse. I respect that you don't want to spend any money, taxpayer money at all, in order to study it. But at least then authorize the planning board to go forward on these projects and then bring the information to you. To say you're going to vote no on all three of them when you don't even know the first thing of the professionals that say that they can do something about this.
That's not what they said. Excuse me, Mayor. Maybe you haven't read them, but we got these very extensive reports on each of the properties. I don't know if you got it. I can't believe you haven't. But as I said, take a good look at what we were said.
Yeah, I understand that. And if somebody feels that they can resuscitate the property and make a buck and put it back on the rolls and fix the infrastructure without impacting neighbors or absorb the infrastructure, why wouldn't we want to study something? I would never blame you for voting for or against something once we're well informed about the subject. And if it doesn't cost the city a nickel, why not give professionals a chance to convince you? You could always vote no later.
One advantage, if some of these properties are challenged, one advantage of the redevelopment process is that we can put, restrictions on it to make it less flood prone than it is right now. So, from my understanding, that could be a potential advantage for the city, for some of these.
The way it was explained, to your point, is that sometimes some of the properties could absorb the water differently so it doesn't bleed out to other communities. And they are blighted and dangerous, and they attract vermin. And it's just not a good look for the city. And if you don't think it could be fixed based on your experience, I respect that. But I disagree. I think we should, if it doesn't cost the city a nickel, I wouldn't want the city engineer and city treasury to be affected unless we feel through some competent, I guess they're not objective because they're interested parties, but some professional feels that it can be cured. Explain why it can be cured, who's going to do it, what it's going to cost the city, and what kind of effect it's going to have in the area. And they were very strategic as to what they chose. One of them was ruled out by the planning board engineer and tossed. So again, I think the governing body has to decide fundamentally if it's in the business or in the mood to fix things that are broken, and we let private capitalism compel the process.
All right, so to be continued, I guess, at this point.
What's the continuation? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure. That's why I was vague.
Do you want to get some feedback from Franz?
Yeah, I think that's a good first step from our city engineer.
He's certainly familiar with the city and, knows almost every nook and cranny, I would say.
As long as we're going to people to testify about things, I would like to know why you have two one-family homes that have been allowed to deteriorate to this extent, and why the building department, why they haven't been inspected and fined if necessary. Why were these properties allowed to deteriorate to this extent? Something doesn't smell right. First of all, there are loads of people, I have them all over my neighborhood, that would love to pick up private homes to work on, whether it's to demolish and rebuild or whatever. This has nothing to do with reevaluating and redeveloping. And it hasn't been done, and it turns up in this. Now, don't you find that a little strange? The two one-family houses in Englewood, where the real estate market is so hot. I could give you the names of 15 people in this neighborhood, my neighborhood, in the 3rd Ward, that would love to get a hold of those properties. Why do we have to even consider redevelopment? And as I say, I really don't like the way this was done. That the same architectural firm did these 3 reports, 3 separate projects. Obviously, somebody contacted them and went to the owners of the properties. It just doesn't happen that way. And I would like to get to the bottom of it, and I'm surprised that some of you aren't agreeing with me. It just is not right. And I hope that the people from the community that are listening to the meeting, also look into this and find out more about this. I don't care what ward they're in, 1st Ward, 2nd Ward, 4th Ward. If it doesn't look right, there's got to be a reason for it. And to me, as I say, I have no problem spending money to make this city a better place. That's gonna benefit me as an individual, as a councilwoman, my constituents, everybody. But this is not that. This is not that. You want to bring in experts, fine. But I would say that there is more to this, and I would like to get to the bottom of it.
So are you okay with asking Franz to weigh in on this?
I don't mind. You want to bring Franz in? He's going to tell you what to... Listen, they spent a long time, and God knows what these reports cost to produce. And by the way, some of them are not blighted. Some of them are open spaces.
Just vacant.
This is nonsense.
They went through I don't agree with any of that. I also raised an eyebrow. I didn't find anything conspiratorial or untoward. I didn't find nobody approached me. Quite honestly, some of them had properties on it that were dangerous metals, and some of them were open with marsh properties that need to be fixed. But we got to start someplace. And if it is clean hands, and if the city engineer believes ultimately that there is a path, even if there is resistance, why not use the physics of a developer who wants to make a buck to fix the city up? I mean, nothing is all, developers aren't all evil. You understand? And we can leave property that looks like garbage with buildings that are falling apart, or open space with mud all over the place, but it's just not a good look for the city. And the planning board is doing its job. I think the council should do its as well, not just defer.
What is our job then, Mayor?
What is our job then?
In my
Your
opinion,
It's
the
to
job
push
is
this
to
back.
to entertain information and make an informed choice. Don't say no because you fear a conspiracy.
I don't
Because you
fear
fear
it.
change.
We don't
We
fear
don't fear
anything, but
change.
50 Inglewood Avenue has never been built on, and that's the reason why it's never been built on.
Let's find out
Because it's
why.
on the crack. Because it's on the floodplain. It will not have that. That'll be a failed project. It's just
I'm
like
not- I'm
Inglewood
not-
Avenue. It's just like Inglewood Avenue. Listen,
Listen, I'm
Listen,
not
it's
a
been failed.
developer, nor are you.
no,
I think-
you know what? I'm not a developer, but I lived by there for many years. And I understand it with that water there. And if you go by there, people are pumping water out of the basement. It's just there. And it will be just like 53 West Palisade Avenue.
So why
Because
would
if
somebody
they're
want
all
to
on the same,
develop
they're
it?
all on the same thing. They're all on the
Charles, why
same
would-
thing.
Why
I'm
would
just telling
somebody
you.
want to?
Why
somebody
why
want
would
to
you
develop?
want to listen, you can bring anybody who you want. What I'm saying to you is
I don't care.
the reason why those are failed, what you're gonna ask people to buy into failed projects?
No,
That's what's
no,
gonna
not
happen. 20
not at all.
20 years from now, when that thing sinks or whatever, then you're gonna say, oh, look what happened here.
All right, man.
And that's all I'm saying is, and I'm with Councilwoman Marin on this.
Okay.
It stinks. And the two houses on Ivy Lane, all they need is a little love and they're in good shape. The Byswinger house and the house next door to that.
If
Miss
somebody
Byswinger,
believes,
Miss Byswinger's house is in very good condition. All it needs is some fixer up, and people are occupying those residencies now.
I
I don't know.
have
I don't
no
know.
skin in the game, but if somebody feels that they can improve a location, a site, a building, we should be listening, and then you can say no. But don't say no because you have history of something years ago. You
Well,
don't know what building.
Okay, so we're let's
Yeah, I
let's start
forgot. You
with,
don't know. Go ahead.
Listen.
Go ahead, Ken.
yeah, clearly, I think we have a read on the will of the council here.
Mhm.
I think it's pretty unambiguous. But let's get Franz to weigh in. You know, he is our city engineer, and just see what he thinks and to get some opinion. And if we want to move forward after that, we can see where we're going with it. But I think that would be the next step.
Cool.
Okay, so obviously no action. It wasn't even contemplated tonight, and nothing for the next meeting necessarily. But we'll ask Franz to weigh in and give us some guidance with it.
Is it
All right.
possible I'm sorry, is it possible to get the testimony from the developers from the planning board and circulate that to the council members? If, we spend the time, I've already listened to this stuff. If we spend the time listening to the testimony and then decide whether or not it's worth bringing the engineer in, I think that's probably a more efficient way to proceed, as opposed to having Franz come in and restate whatever he said at the planning board meeting.
I don't think Franz was at the planning board meeting.
He wasn't.
He didn't make that?
No.
No, that was
he wasn't.
Mr. Costa.
Okay.
And yeah, there was somebody from the developer side, and then Mr. Costa, and he killed one of the projects on the rival wing. The
I
idea is,
listened.
Mr. Hamer's point, you should be able to get a transcript of it, whether they had a.
Is that a YouTube video that we can
Yeah.
get?
Yeah, there is a
Okay.
YouTube.
So if you'd spend, just the time to listen to those segments. I think that will give you enough clarity, all of you, enough clarity to make an informed decision on whether or not this makes sense about, pursuing and moving forward. I think three of us have already
We were there,
expressed a desire to.
but I think the three who
To not
expressed
do
the
anything.
desire were at the meeting, Councilman Hamer.
I
Right.
agree. I think the three of us, that's the majority. I think there's less interest than
I think
being
four actually were at the meeting. I think.
demonstrated here.
I was there
I think
too.
four. He was there too. I mean, there's four of us there.
Anyway,
But I don't think there was no substance that was presented. These were ideas that were presented. And I understand that you are set that this can't be improved. But if it can be improved and it doesn't cost the city a buck to listen, I don't see any harm. Okay, in other words, your reticence may be institutional rather than substantive.
Okay, so we have a long
the
closed session and the
substance of
guests
my
coming.
reticence has to do with 53 West Palisade Avenue and the flooding that took place there and the devastation that we just recently experienced that everyone is trying to figure out from a legal standpoint. And everything, the residents who live there are still trying to resolve those issues. And rather than, move quickly down a path that takes us back into another situation like that, where the property gets built and, whether it's held on to or sold to someone else and the developers and builders move on, that's my concern. That's my only concern.
Wait, stop. Okay.
Yeah.
No. Listen, Michael impugns.
Please.
Michael gets to impugn, and we move on. I'm just stating to you that
I'm giving you the last word, Ray.
I'm glad. I'm just stating to you that the substance of my issues with this and everything else has to do with what we've been through and the way we've responded or not responded to what took place in early September with Ida. And I don't want anybody else to have to go through that. So that's the substance of where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm closing discussion on this because we have a long closed agenda and we have a guest coming in 15 minutes. Okay, so at this point, we're going to open the meeting to the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak is asked to raise their hand, be placed in queue to be called upon to speak. Name and address for the record, please. Yancy, do we have anyone in queue?
Sorry. Yes, there are 3 people. And just a reminder to everybody else at the bottom of the screen is the more button. Click on that. That's how you raise your hand. Also a reminder, once your 2 minutes are up, your 2 minutes are up. And also just the rules on decorum for the meeting. Thank you. First is Peter Jansen. Peter?
Yes, I'm just unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak about the Board of Adjustment. I watched and participated in the last 4 years of Board Adjustment meetings, nearly every one. And I can tell you was riddled with poor attendance. The current members are too busy or they just don't take it seriously. I put my name in the last 3 years to specifically get nominated for the board. The mayor had asked, and this is what prompted me. The mayor said he's looking for architects, engineers, and construction professionals. Mayor, I have 2 engineering degrees. I have certification in building code enforcement and over 16 years of construction management. This is not sour grapes. Don't come back to me and say it's sour grapes. Last year you said, I'm gonna nominate Arnold Brown for optics. But I'll put you in if something comes up, unquote. It's in my notes. And I watched this discussion that you all had about 20 minutes ago about the appointments. It was disjointed, it was chaotic, and it was unprofessional. I thought it was a Seinfeld episode. Anyone that would suggest that Arnold or Adam Brown and David Barron should be alternate members, they don't know what they're talking about. Brown and Barron are the most capable members on the board. They are the leaders. They're the most knowledgeable. They're professionals. They take it seriously. They're at every meeting. This is disrespectful to them, what you did today. Anyone who attends the meetings knows that. You should have done the right thing and done it once, like a few council members suggested. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, next is Diane Jensen. Diane?
Hi, Diane Jansen, 589 Ridgeland Terrace. Thank you, Councilwoman Marin. Thank you, Charles Cobb, at large. Thank you, Wayne Hamer. Councilwoman Marin, you hit the nail right on the head from the get-go at the planning meeting. Doug Byrne says, we have some projects and we get them all the time. And under a certain law, we can or cannot look at them. And I've selected 4 that I think we should look at because they're more substantial. Okay? Already the hairs on my back went up. I'm like, how did he select those 4? And then they come before the planning board. Other members like Emily Mann and the chairman, Mr. David, said, aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Which other people from the public, like myself, agreed. But no, they needed to go forward and look at these to hear what these people had to say. And they're in flood-prone areas, all except for one, which is Ivy Lane, which was considered by some as dangerous and blighted. Well, I'm sorry, that area is not dangerous and blighted. How dare they even say that? The bottom line goes, they come before the planning committee, and who is representing all the different projects but Francis Reiner, Director of Planning and Development for Reiner, he's a partner with his firm, and he is also one of the developers or the main developer for the city of Hackensack. How convenient all this is. That's all I'm going to say for now. You 3 hit it the nail on the head. They want zoning. They want you to do spot zoning. Don't allow it. They're flood-prone areas. Thank you, and thank you, Yancy, for being so nice and letting me go 2 more seconds. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, next is Amy. Amy?
Amy Bullock, Howland Avenue. When Ida happened, Pascal came and toured the flood-prone areas and stated that the Army Corps of Engineers needed to come in and do an assessment of that culvert. So I'm curious to know why we are not going that route before considering any redevelopment. That culvert needs to be addressed before any more projects happen in Inglewood, period, whether they're near the culvert or not. And I have a question, maybe Yancy can send me an answer via email. I'd like to know how many proposals the city received in regards to Liberty School, and what is the expected date on when additional information on those proposals will be shared with the public.
That's still confidential. And the city council is going to be going into closed session to discuss that. We can't even disclose the number.
Amy, you're muted.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Next is June. June? Mute?
Good evening, everybody. June Gregg, Elmore Avenue, Englewood, New Jersey. Hi, just to throw a monkey wrench into all of this is on the Englewood Avenue or 50 William Street property. I guess a couple of years ago, I had to do some research to save, what is it? Is it 61 Elmore Avenue from being saved, to kind of prove that it was part of the park. And I actually did a FOIA request. I went to Hackensack and, did some research. and I actually came across because we all know Donald McKay was the one who donated that McKay Park to the city of Englewood for the people and the children of the city. And I want to say maybe 20, 30 years later, his children acquired an additional park that, like, in the letter, it kind of talks about how it goes from the park to the middle of William Street. So, like, that other side of the park, like, I've always wondered, how in the world did William Street from like the middle of I guess that would be Overpeck Creek to the middle of William Street, how in the world did that ever become property that was owned by others when it was originally purchased by the children of Donald McKay and donated to the city as part of the park? So that's another monkey wrench. And I don't know if you want to dig up the Oprah request. I actually, I have the letters, April 30th, 1921, to the honorable mayor and common council of the city of Englewood, and they actually lay everything out. So, I mean, is neither here nor there, but I think historically that whole area has been a flood zone, and you could easily pull up the FEMA, or Property Shark maps, and you can see like the heart of the flood zone runs right through 50 and William Street.
Sorry, your 2 minutes are up.
Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sorry.
June, for telling us about that research.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to close the public session now because we're very tight on time here. We really need to finish up get to closed session by 9:30. So we're on to bills and claims. Are there any specific questions, or can we, well, let's have a motion in a second, and then, we have Mr. Kaufman here.
So move.
Second. All right.
Can we get what Mr. Ruderman has worked on? I mean, I see he's gave us some bills, for almost $30-something thousand plus. Can we get a break? What topics he's working on? We don't have to, and how many hours? Can we get a breakdown of that?
Actually, proactively asked for that information, so I'm also awaiting it. So I will, when I get it,
Okay.
I'll forward it on.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, just in the interest of time, perhaps if there are any further questions, we can email Sonia or Mr. Kaufman. But if we can go ahead to call a vote, so we can get to our closed session.
So moved.
All right. Well, actually, so roll call, please, Yancy.
Right.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen,
Yep.
Councilman Hamer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Maren,
Yes.
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes, thank you. So now we're going to move into closed session, and we do not expect to take any action when we come out. Bill, can you do the honors?
Sure. Be resolved by the governing body of the city of Englewood that a meeting closed session pursuant to subsection 7 and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act to discuss contract negotiations, litigation, personnel matters, and matters within the attorney-client privilege. And be further resolved that the discussion of closed session will be disclosed to the public upon taking final action thereon, provided it does not violate the attorney-client privilege or constitute an undue invasion of privacy. And be further resolved that the governing body will return to open session at the conclusion of the closed session, but simply to adjourn the meeting, and is not anticipated any other action would be taken at that time.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
Councilman Cohen. Councilman Cohen, you're muted.
Yes, sorry, Rose.
Councilman Hamer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Maren,
Yes.
Council President Rosenzweig.
Yes. All right, thank you, everyone.
Right.
Everybody just go to the link I sent you earlier.